Hello and welcome to Empire Sports Talk. I am your host, Roman Gennaro, and this is a very special episode because it's the first time that we have a guest in the studio with us. Friend of the program, been on here 3 times officially, 4 times unofficially, because there was one time where you did it and we videoed you and we couldn't see you, so I didn't post it. The lighting was weird. But my friend Bruce Bradley is here to talk all things NBA, and it should be fun. Thanks for joining us, Bruce.
Glad to be here as always, man.
So before we jump into our main topic, which is when Bruce and I are together, we always talk about the NBA and that kind of thing. And even though it's in the off season, we always find something to talk about. And trust me, we have something to talk about. Sorry, my chair is squeaking. But before we do that, I want to cover a couple things. First, in the NFL, the Jonathan Taylor drama continues in Indianapolis as the Colts seemingly extended an olive branch saying, we'll allow you to seek a trade for yourself, but we have the ultimate veto power if we don't think that we can get a first round pick or something of the same value. And they set a deadline for Tuesday, which was the NFL's deadline to remove players from the physically unable to perform list so that they could play week 1. Jonathan Taylor, it looked like they came close, but they did not find a partner. Jonathan Taylor did not get removed from the physically unable to perform list, so he is still with the Colts, and he will not be eligible to play until at least week 5 as he's coming back from an ankle injury. The situation's gotten ugly. GM Chris Ballard used those exact words, but he believes the relationships are repairable. I don't know. I think that Irsay's done too much damage to the situation. I think that Jonathan Taylor has put himself in this situation, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. And I don't know if it's repairable, but because the Colts are now accusing him of potentially holding in, being that they think he might be healthy, and he's pretending that his ankle still hurts. So it's not getting any better. It's getting worse. And this and I've said it for weeks, and Bruce, I'll get your opinion on this, is Jonathan Taylor requested an extension from the Colts. This is the last year of his rookie deal. At the same time when the NFL running back situation was Saquon Barkley couldn't get a deal, and he nearly got franchise tagged. And then Josh Jacobs got franchise tagged, and Tony Pollard got franchise tagged, and Dalvin Cook got released. And like all these, Ezekiel Elliott released. All these guys who were the best in the league could not find contracts. They could not find extensions. They couldn't, in the case of Dalvin Cook and Ezekiel Elliott, could not find teams for an extended period of time. And when they did, they were like 1 year, $6 million contracts. So the situation becomes Jonathan Taylor watches all this, watches Saquon, threaten to hold out, and then eventually sign for $900,000 over the franchise tag he refused. Josh Jacobs, the NFL's rushing leader last year, just signed a 1-year deal worth $12 million, which is $2 million over the franchise tag he refused. And Jonathan Taylor says, sign me to an extension or trade me. Is he not watching what's happening around him? It reminds me of the similar thing happening in the NBA where James Harden is looking directly at the Damian Lillard situation and being like, it's okay, I'm different. It'll be different for me. Demands a trade when it hasn't worked for Damian Lillard. And now here we are. So now you have Jonathan Taylor watching all this, the ridiculous devaluation of the running back position in the NFL. It doesn't seem to me like Jonathan Taylor's paying attention to his options, paying attention to what the league is telling him, and it's just a weird situation. What do you have to say about that?
No, I think there's a good parallel you made with the James Harden and the Dame Lillard thing. It's kind of like this culture that's kind of evolved with the player empowerment and more so the player entitlement. And I mean, to some degree, I guess there's value there as far as like knowing your value and your bargaining power, but it gets to a point where it kind of falls into this state of delusion.
But because the league is telling you otherwise right now.
Right, you see these running backs they're getting devalued. It's the way the game is being played. It's there's a shift that's occurring, and you got to be more aware of the carries, from the running back position
right.
and things like that. And so it's just, you can ignore all the signs if you want.
I mean, you look at it, and to look at this from both sides, Jonathan Taylor in just 3 years has become one of the best running backs in the NFL.
Right.
So from that standpoint, he's like, hey, look at me. Like, I am literally one of the best running backs in the NFL. But then also last year he dealt with injuries and was not the same running back.
Right.
And was not, and he shouldered a lot of the load at Wisconsin, a lot of load in high school. So it's like, do running backs have a shelf life of do they have a certain number of carries in them? And is he hitting it early? Because 2 years ago, he was the offense for the Indianapolis Colts. And I will continue to defend Carson Wentz that season as the Colts quarterback, because they were one game shy they were 1 game shy of the playoffs. If they had beaten Jacksonville in week 18, I was there. It was sad. Whatever. Yeah. They would have made the playoffs. Yeah. Carson Wentz was brought in not to be the MVP candidate of 2017 before his injury. He was brought in to hand the ball to Jonathan Taylor and not screw up, and that's exactly what he did. And yet now people look at his one season in Indy and call it a disaster, and I'm like, were you really paying attention? So I think there is something to say that Jonathan Taylor is one of the better teams or running backs in the league, but he's been injured, and we don't know how he's going to look after that injury. And any team that does trade for him, they know that he wants an extension. So in the realm of, we have to do this running back market, it's like, okay, you have to give up trade capital for a player, and he wants an extension on top of that. Now the one trade that came out that we knew about was Miami, and one of the reasons that didn't happen was that Indianapolis wanted Jalen Waddle in return. And that has been called basically a ridiculous request. And I look at that and I say, why? Is it just because you think Indy's going to be bad? Why is that a ridiculous request? He's your wide receiver 2. You would bring in a running back 1 that you would potentially sign for the long term. You already have Tyreek Hill. If Tua's healthy, we've seen what he can do when healthy last year at quarterback. They have Jalen Ramsey, who was previously thought to be out for the year, but he might play. I don't think a wide receiver 2 of Waddle's caliber is a ridiculous ask for Jonathan Taylor. It's a specialty position starter for a specialty position starter. I don't see why people think that's a ridiculous ask. I really don't.
Miami even that much more of a complete team. They already got a pretty powerful receiving core as it is. I don't think that's ridiculous either.
The other trade that came out was that the Packers were interested, which was interesting to me because they already have Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. So unless that trade package involved sending one of those guys directly back to Indianapolis, I don't even know why the Packers would do that trade. Right. I'm not buying the Packers hype that a lot of people are. Do I think Jordan Love can be good? Yeah. But have we seen anything? No, he's made 3 starts. And they have no wide receiver 1 because they all went to the Jets. Their best players are their running backs who are being devalued. Look at that. I did my standing predictions a couple weeks ago, and I have them at 4-13. I don't buy it. I don't buy it at all. I think the Lions are going to win that division running away. For sure. Because last year. Last year the thing too is the Vikings were 13-4. They were 11-0 in one possession games. That won't happen again. Mm-hmm. And they had a plus minus of -3. -3 for the whole year. They were 13-4. And we know Kirk Cousins struggles in prime time. He's 16-19 in his career. They have 5 this year. 5 primetime games.
He's going to get exposed again.
You think he's going to go 5-0 all of a sudden? No disrespect to Kirk Cousins. Dan Campbell is the perfect coach in Detroit. He is Detroit through and through. Charles Barkley said the other day, he's like, man, I wish I could have a do-over. I want to play for that guy. I want to go play football and play for Dan Campbell.
See what he did.
So we'll get off football and get to the meat of it. But I do want to touch on baseball real quick. And before we do that, for those at home, one of the last times that Bruce was here for a sports reason, and Bruce, you will get this audio right away, and you'll laugh, and I will put the video on the final cut. But one of the last times Bruce was here was November 3rd, 2021, when my Atlanta Braves were one game away from winning the World Series, and this happened.
It's pure ecstasy. Bliss.
Quoting yourself. So, I would say that's not my proudest moment, but it probably was. But it just wasn't my most glamorous moment. And right after that video, I ran upstairs, and I will put this picture in there too. This is a pile-on moment for me, but we have to relive it. I ran upstairs. I got every Braves hat that I own, and I put them all on my head at the same time. And I will post that picture as well for all of you guys watching on YouTube and wherever you watch this. But today was the deadline for players who got waived to be added to a roster to be able to be eligible for the playoffs. And the biggest story that I've talked about on the show, and one of the biggest stories that has gone on in baseball, is the Angels were desperately trying to make a push for the last year that they were likely going to have Shohei Ohtani, the greatest player we've ever seen. I'm comfortable saying that now. And I wholeheartedly believe they should have traded him when they had the chance, because now they're going to get nothing. They instead went all in, trading for starting pitchers Lucas Giolito, reliever Ronaldo Lopez, Randall Grichuk, several pieces that were going to do it. And for about a few, and so it looked like it was going to go good. They lost the next 7. And they have fallen completely off the face of the earth. And now all of those players have been waived. Every single one has been waived and picked up by a team to make a playoff push. And Shohei Ohtani has torn his UCL and will not pitch for the rest of the year, but continues to hit. So this is it could not be any worse for the Angels right now. And I like to be proven right. But this one hurts, because when you have a talent like that, not to mention that he's on the same team with Mike Trout, who in 10 years has never been to the playoffs with that organization. It's like, now what? You have 2 injured superstars, one of whom you're going to get nothing for, and the other of whom is literally wasting his career on a franchise that has, let's be honest here, has no idea what they're doing. And it's a great franchise, and I really would like to see it happen, but they have no idea what they're doing, and that's just a fact. And so I look at this, and I look at Lucas Giolito and Ronaldo Lopez and Randall Grichuk being waived, and I just have to shake my head and be like, what did you think was going to happen? They weren't going to catch Texas in the division. They weren't going to catch Houston even for second place, and now they're not going to catch Seattle. The best they could have hoped for, if everything went right, was a wild card berth, and they were going to lose in the first round. Like, if they had traded him, they could have wiped out the other team's farm system and built from the ground up, because they still have some good young players that they could build around, and they have Trout there. He's not going anywhere. I don't know why at this point. He's not going anywhere, but now here we are, that you have an injured superstar, one of the best the game's ever seen, because he does both. What the heck? And now you've just literally wasted 4 years not making the playoffs once with the 2 best players in baseball on the same team. And that does tell you how hard baseball is, because it's not like the NBA where you can go get LeBron or you can go get one piece and change everything. But it's just sucks. I'll just say it like it is. Like, now he's hurt and he's not going to pitch. And then even if he says he can hit, he's not going to hit it 100% because he's got a tear down here. And so that you can't be effective in anything when that happens. Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, Bruce, but the UCL is basically the ligament that requires Tommy John surgery, which, if you get it, is about a 12-month recovery. Because what they do, they basically take your other one and they replace it.
Wow.
So it's about a 12-month recovery, and when you come back after a year, you're usually not the same. Now, this doesn't affect hitters as much, but he also pitches. And he said that he doesn't know if he's going to get surgery yet. He's gonna continue to hit while he gets a second opinion. But the longer he waits to have surgery, the more time he's going to miss next season, which is going to affect the contract he's going to get. It's just it's a disaster. Like, you saw a player that was giving literally 200%. Literally, because he was giving everything he had 2 ways. They created a rule. They created a rule just for him to allow him to be the designated hitter on days that he pitched and to be able to stay in after he came out of the game. That the league created a rule for this man. And only the best of all time get rules created for them. And now here he is, literally, like, his body's failing him because he's literally having to put this team on his back. And here we are. So I just want to touch on that. It just frustrates the heck out of me. Do you have any comments on any of that?
No, that's it was kind of news to me, the severity of his injury. I know he had gotten injured, but I didn't know exactly where and the surgery was involved, and that's craziness. Because Mike Trout, legend, just rotting on that team.
10 years, and he hasn't made the playoffs once.
It makes no
And he's
sense.
won two MVPs at this point, 3 maybe.
Yeah.
And not one playoff appearance.
I just to kind of even try to get in their heads, I guess just having such an icon, obviously that's a wrestle to feel like, you're giving that away, but like thinking about the trade value for a guy like Ohtani, it's just like immeasurable. So I don't know. Horrible situation.
You can't trade draft picks in baseball. What you can do, you can trade prospects, and if you and you can get a ton of prospects.
Okay.
You can get a ton, because baseball is the only sport where you don't go straight to the league if you're drafted. Like, it could be 3-4 years before,
Right.
And I think every league should have that, honestly, because there are some players that go straight to the league in the NBA or the NFL. They ain't ready.
It's a grown man's sport.
They ain't ready.
Yeah.
Like, you hear all the time, NFL players, NBA players, about their welcome to the NBA moment because they go straight from college or back a little bit further, they would go straight from high school to grown men.
Yep.
And it's like, you never really hear that from minor league baseball players because they have slowly been ratcheted up.
Right.
Single A, double A, triple A. And triple A is like that lower level of major league talent. Like, you're right there.
Right.
And so every level is different, but you still get that seasoning.
Right.
You see all the time these guys that jump from double A and they struggle a little bit. So then the team kicks them back down to triple A for a couple of weeks. They come back up again, smooth.
Wow.
Happens all the time. And so you can't, but if Shohei Ohtani leaves in free agency, which he will do, the only thing that's going to happen for the Angels is they're going to get one compensatory pick. One. As opposed to, they could have easily gotten 5, 6 prospects, maybe even some major league level players. The Washington Nationals completely rebuilt their young core by trading one player that was a major league level a couple of years ago. So it's just frustrating. I want to get off that because I want to get to a Major League Baseball topic that I had you do a little bit of looking into, because I do want to play you something off of that. And the struggles that's happening on the south side of Chicago. And I've said before, it's bad. It's bad. They are like 30, 35 games under 500 at this point. They've been accused of having no culture, no discipline, nothing. You've heard the stories. The fight between Tim Anderson and Jose Ramirez of the Guardians on the field. The rumor that, Yasmani Grandal slapped teammate Tim Anderson in the face when Tim Anderson told him to get the F out if he was mad about not being in the lineup. The stuff with Kenyon Middleton's name being left off the board when he came in as an opposing relief pitcher a couple weeks after he made the comments he did. The GM has been fired. The president's been fired. They announced their new GM today, so hopefully that gets better. But I don't know if you've heard this, so I want to play. This was, and for anyone watching this that didn't hear it, this was the White Sox best player after a 6-3 loss to the Seattle Mariners on August 22nd. The first thing you'll hear is him. The reporters were asking him if there was a talk about leadership in the clubhouse. And his answer was raised some eyebrows. And the White Sox post-game crew had comments. One of whom you'll hear was Ozzie Guillen, who was the manager of the White Sox when they won the World Series back in 2005. So you have to imagine it's especially rough for him to see, as bad as it's gotten. But I'm going to play this clip in its entirety. The first thing you're going to hear is the reporters talking to Eloy Jimenez about the leadership in the clubhouse.
There's been a lot of questions about guys having to step up being leaders. Have you talked to your teammates, and do you guys talk about that moving forward, being leaders on this team?
Not really. Not really.
Thank you.
And there's the problem in the clubhouse again. They gotta fix that.
By the way,
They gotta fix that.
we waste 2 minutes on a show. Listen to that. You don't know what to score.
I mean, I'll say it. I'll say it.
Oh, okay, I say
You
it.
say it. I want you to say it.
Yes.
We're thinking the same thing.
The reason they fired Kenny and Rick because then
The GM and
this is
president.
that. If they think I'm wrong, prove me wrong. That's all you have to say. The reason they fire those guys is just because the players don't perform. Most of the time, managers give blame when the players don't perform. But when they fire the people, sign you, look yourself in the mirror. It's time to start playing better.
If I got paid that money, I would make sure I'm on the field. I'm making sure I'm playing winning baseball. I'm giving the best of myself. And if there's a leadership problem in there, I'm trying to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm not giving that answer.
Well, there is a lack of leadership.
Yeah.
That's obvious.
Leadership. Nobody's leader there.
But no, there is a lack
Yeah.
of leadership, and there has been no standard set whatsoever. Players, kids are going to do what they can get away with, and this team has not been held accountable this entire year.
Yeah.
There are times when they don't play hard. They don't run hard.
And there's 162 games.
And everyone knows it. The fans know it. We know it. And that cannot happen. So hopefully someone will come in here, set a standard, set something in place, and hold these players accountable, and bring in some guys, some character guys that want to go out and win, and have a desire to win, and a desire to do the things it takes to win.
All right, so that's pretty damning right there. Like that, when you are effectively a leader of a team, regardless of how bad the team is, and you're asked, do you talk about leadership? Do you talk about who's going to step up and maybe fix this? And you just go, no. Like, your job is to, no, it doesn't matter if you're 0 and 100.
Right.
You're like, we'll figure it out.
Exactly.
We owe it to this fan base. We owe it to the city we want to be. That's just the sound of giving up.
Yeah.
And you can hear it in the voice of the post-game guys that they're just like, what the heck was that? And so when you add this to everything else that's happened in Chicago, I don't think I've seen a bigger mess. How does all this hit you?
I mean, it's pretty clear just tracking along, just from a very outsider perspective with this. I mean, you hear that, and it's just, even just as a man, like, you just hear dignity lost. Dignity, the sense of pride, almost as if, like, they're playing these games, like, they're over before they begin.
And you heard one of these guys be like, kids are going to do what they can get away
Exactly.
with. Like,
and that's what you hear in that.
There's no grown-ups
They
in
have
that
to be
clubhouse.
reared like children, like, and so, and I can appreciate what the gentleman, what did you say his name was before?
Ozzie Guillen, who was the manager when they last won the World Series. So you can tell that he's particularly perturbed by what's happening in
I mean,
Chicago.
that just sounded straight up like a coach.
I would march, honestly, if I was Ozzy, I would march to the new GM and be like, you need me to manage again? Like, Ozzy's not that old.
Yeah.
Ozzy's not that old.
Step in real quick.
Yeah.
I mean, I hear it because it's like, because like, when what you're hearing in that as a coach, and it's like, that's just lack of effort. That's like stuff that shouldn't even be having to like get these grown men to realize when they're stepping out on the field, they're getting paid these massive amounts of money, performing in this, there's I know, as far as I know, with the White Sox, there's legacy there,
Been around a long time.
a long time, and so just the fact that they've gotten to a point where it's been talk of, you got fans talking about selling the franchise and things of that nature.
Firing the president, firing the GM, and as Ozzy said, he's like, you fire managers, head coaches all the time. Those guys get blamed for stuff they probably shouldn't.
Exactly.
But when the guys that sign you, when the guys above that go, it's like something's really
There's
wrong
something
here.
at the root of the culture of the team, and so
I've done a lot of interviews with athletes, and you've been an athlete yourself, and the number one thing that I hear from them when I ask about, what about this group of guys? What made this season special? It's, we all cared. We all wanted to win. We all liked being around each other.
yes,
It mattered to us what happened when we left that locker room. And I'm not getting any of that here. You had players get traded. Kenyon Middleton, who came out and was like, there's no discipline. There's like that nobody gets called out for showing up late to a workout or missing a meeting or doing that. And then Lance Lynn, who had been in Chicago for a long time and had just been traded, be like, he's not wrong. I've been here for a decade. He's not wrong. Wow. And then you have another guy who was traded at the deadline he joins his new team, and 2 days after he's with his new team, he's like, I've never had this much fun playing baseball in my life. It's a disaster.
Yeah.
There's no other word. I use this term a lot, and my dad thinks it's funny. It's a dumpster fire on the south side of Chicago right now, and I know it especially hurts because the Cubs are playing well. Yeah. So when you have your hated crosstown rival literally outplaying you, when probably before the season you had a better roster.
Yeah.
Like in 2021, they were one of the best teams in the American League, and then now 2 years later, and this. Yeah. And it's just, it's baffling to me. I wanted to get your thoughts on everything that's happened. And as an outsider perspective, you're not as big into baseball as I am. I invite you over to watch the World Series, whatever. Right. But just as you said, like as a man and as a sports fan, as a person, like to hear this stuff, and to hear like just how bad that the culture of an organization is rotting from the inside out. And it's like, how do you fix? There's no fix. It's going to take years. And I hope this guy comes in, this new GM comes in and goes, all right, all right, we're throwing everything out. Yeah. You hear the excitement that Washington Commanders fans have now that Dan Snyder is out, and they bring in that new GM, and I think Magic Johnson have had something to do with that ownership group as well, and they are fired up. Oh, wow. I mean, they're not a playoff team this year, but I think they're going to win a few more games than people think, because that fan base and that team is so ready for a change. And I think that's what needs to happen here. But as long as you have your star players saying, no, we haven't talked about leadership, we haven't talked about the needs of this franchise, I think there's a time for another trade. Which is
unfortunate, because from what I've heard, they spent from 2009 to 2020 or so, kind of rebuilding, getting these high dollar.
They tried. They tried.
And so it's just.
But when you're bringing those high dollar athletes into a landfill. Yeah. A landfill of culture and discipline. Like, they're just going to fall into it. Yeah. And I found it funny that one of the people that pushed back on all this criticism was Andrew Benintendi, who currently plays for the White Sox. Of course he's going to say it. He's on the roster still. He's going to be like, yeah, it sucks. Can't wait to go lose today. Like, What's he going to say? They're paying him.
Exactly.
But it's incredibly telling that the people that are paid to broadcast for this team are like, what in the actual crap? Including a beloved member of the organization's history, Ozzie Guillen, being like, did you hear that? I heard that. What is that? So it's baffling to me, and I wanted you to hear that, and I wanted to get your take on how bad it has been. But we can jump to why we're both here, the NBA. And first thing I want to talk about is James Harden's still in the news. He, much like Jonathan Taylor, and I compared the Jonathan Taylor situation to James Harden and Damian Lillard. I'm not putting blame on Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard has been loyal to the Trailblazers for 11 years, has given them multiple chances. Please do. And even in the draft, and I get it, the GM and the owner is going to do what's best for the organization long term. But Damian Lillard pleaded with them, like, please use the second pick or the third pick to get. And he asked for Paul George. He asked for Draymond Green. He said, please. He's like, I don't want to play with another young player. Nothing against Scoot Henderson. I think he's going to be good. Yeah. And I think, it's obvious now that Damian Lillard's going to start the season in Portland. Yeah. And I think it could be interesting with him. And maybe
rumors floating around like he's going to magically pop up in Miami.
Maybe they'll play. Maybe they'll play well, and he'll be like, "This isn't so bad." It happens. Yeah. There are still some dark horse teams I think would be really interesting. Toronto, Utah. I think would be really, really interesting. Yeah. But it's just like, but to have, we're not talking about that. To have Harden see that and be like, I want to be traded and I only want to play for the Clippers and blah 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 blah. One, why would the Clippers want you? Because they have Kawhi Leonard, who's their main scorer. Yeah. They have Paul George, who is capable of putting up MVP spurts. You are a ball-dominant point guard now who is out of shape, who is not willing to pass to those other stars, who plays zero defense, which will get you punched in the face by Kawhi Leonard.
And Tyronn.
Why would LA want you? Like, they're good. They're fine. Yeah. I don't even know who their point guard is, but they're cool. Yeah. They don't need you. And the most telling thing to me was, who did James Harden say before the trade request, before he opted back in? Who did he say he wanted to play for?
Or was it? Houston.
He wanted to go back to Houston. Houston's not good. Houston's rebuilding. Yeah. Houston didn't want him. Yeah. A rebuilding team did not want him.
That tells you all you need to know right there.
And then, now, look, I think Philadelphia pulled a little bit of trickery. They said, you opt in, we'll trade you. He opted in. Mm-hmm. They tried. But they control you now. Mm-hmm. You belong to them. Mm-hmm. They tried to find you a trade. They couldn't. Why? Right. Because either the Clippers wanted too much, or they didn't really want Harden that much. Exactly. And I do believe the Clippers looked at other options. Yeah. The reason James Harden opted in the first place is because he looked at the free agent market and realized there wasn't that many choices for him. That's the whole reason he opted in. Right. I don't get it. And as I said on the thing last year, disgruntled is not his current situation. It's his personality trait. Yes. We've seen it every stop. All of them. Mm-hmm. What is this man thinking? Go.
Delusion. At this point, it's like he's found this formula that has worked. This spoiled, bratty tactic. Where like you had mentioned on your previous podcast how he ate his way out to.
You watched it, thanks.
It was Houston.
It was Houston.
Yeah, ate his way out of Houston, and then went to that failed experiment in Brooklyn. And then
which that's let you finish your thought. That was never going to work. And Kyrie Irving needs the ball.
Exactly.
Kevin Durant needs the
That was
ball.
another situation.
James Harden eats the ball.
You just have a team full of ball dominant superstars, you know, and it just turned into a mess. And so I just think it's a mindset thing at this point. And you know, you're dealing with you're not being realistic in what has to occur with this. It's a two-sided equation. You know, you're looking to this is his name escapes me, the GM
Daryl Morey.
You're looking at Daryl Morey as if he's some genie, you know, and like as soon as you're ready to get your wish granted, you know, he could just pull these strings. But as we see, like you just mentioned, in LA, like you have to have some buy-in. Like there has to be a need. He's 33, almost 34.
And he played pretty well in Philly, but he's not the same player.
He's not the same player. He played decent, right? But he's not the same player.
As a number 2.
Right. And you know, you have to deal with all this clearing out of you know, for cap space and all these things. And it's just, I feel like it's just like a level of delusion.
But there's a couple things here.
Player like James Harden right now.
He called Daryl Morey a liar. Daryl Morey didn't lie.
Exactly.
You opted in,
Yeah.
giving them control,
Right.
and they tried to trade you.
Exactly.
And he was like, I'm never going to play for him again. Well, guess what? You have to. Or
Yeah.
the NBA is already investigating you because you're either preempting a holdout, which will get you fined,
Right.
or you know, you're going to force your way into another situation, which you can't really do. So,
And that's the new CBA rules, right?
right.
Yeah.
And so to say Daryl Morey's a liar, one, you joined Philadelphia because of Daryl Morey, because of your relationship with him in Houston, mind you, and that's also why you wanted to go back to Houston, because you loved it so much. You wouldn't have had that situation without Daryl Morey. And guess what? You're going to have to play for him again because there's no market. You already knew that, but now you're pissed.
Yeah.
And you have nowhere else to go. So now you're just going to talk. You're going to go on podcasts. You know how I feel about current players with podcasts. Just no. Like,
Yeah.
James Harden is stuck and he knows it and he's crying like a baby.
Crying.
Like
It's
it's
sad.
gross.
It's sad.
Like
It's sad.
and
Talking about a player that was once regarded as top 75. Did he make it into the top
He
75? He did.
and we're going to talk about that in a minute.
And I'm just like, come on, man.
But here's all the MVPs he's played with. KD twice. Russ twice. Kyrie didn't win an MVP, but he definitely could.
Oh yeah.
He's definitely of that caliber.
Caliber player.
Joel Embiid. Like,
Dude, it's just bad.
like
It's bad.
he's probably played with more separate MVPs than anyone else in this league. And it's I've run out of words for James Harden, and yet I'm still talking about it. It's just he's just so loud. Like
He's
you can't.
loud, and it's just like you really don't have anything to stand on.
He's got no leverage.
Every opportunity, like even if you get more granular with it, and you go to his opportunities to check the box of a championship, and it's just
His best shots in Philly, and he wants out.
Yeah, his best. It's like this makes no sense. What you're trying to
Like,
get
where do
at
you think
this.
you're gonna go?
Right.
Like, where are you gonna go? Like,
I can't help but think it's like, okay, is it for the check now or like?
which he claimed it wasn't when he restructured with Philly in the first place. He took less money with Philly to get the championship, which he does have his best chance if he shuts up and stays there.
Exactly.
He was never gonna win in Houston at his peak
No way.
because he had some good players.
Mhm.
He had no number two.
Mm-hmm.
There was no number two.
Right. He had to get.
And so this is his shot. And he doesn't recognize that. It takes me back to Dwight Howard, where he wanted out of Orlando so bad. And what some people can't realize is that sometimes you're put into the best possible situation for your career. And then they go somewhere bigger. They go to a big market. They go to New York. They go to LA, and they're like, oh, I actually am not as good as I thought.
Right.
And that's what happened with Dwight Howard. he left Orlando and then bounced around the league for basically a team a year until he ended up in Taiwan.
Mm-hmm.
And like this is James Harden now, where he's had more like he was in Houston for a long time, and then he went to Brooklyn. People were like, "Oh, that was exciting," and that was a disaster. And then he, things have gone well in Philly, but here he is again, being like, "I'm awesome. I'm awesome. I'm awesome." Hey, look at the waiting room for your services. It's empty. Like Daryl Morey's standing in there with a lollipop going, "Please," and he's in there by himself. Like it's just I don't understand why he thinks that this is working for him.
It's crying, trying to wind his way out.
Checks notes real quick. Oh, and this is interesting, and I want to get your thoughts on this as well. And I know people have talked a lot about the NBA being soft. And when they talk about that, they mean like, oh, there's no more hand checking, it's not as physical. They mean the actual play on the court. But now, I think the NBA as a culture is maybe the softest of any sport. Because Noah Lyles, U.S. sprinter, did you hear this?
Yeah.
U.S. sprinter Noah Lyles, I don't, was he asked this question? I don't know what brought it up in the presser, but he said, I look at the NBA and they win the NBA Finals, and then they calls them world champions. Like, it's like, oh, okay, like you world champions of the United States in Toronto. Like there's all and then the NBA players were like, bro, like somebody come get this guy. He's talking crazy. And I'm sitting here like, no, he's not. He's right. Like there's one Canadian team and then it's U.S. Like from and sure, a couple of years ago you could say, oh, well, the NBA is the highest level of competition. But now, arguably the three best players in the NBA are international in Jokic, Giannis, and Luka. And I can't remember who it was, and I wish I had saved the screenshot when I saw it. But there was a guy who's playing in the World Cup right now, and he's an NBA player. And he said, some of these guys don't even want to come to the NBA because, like, they see that it's not the best competition. And you see Luka coming in out of shape and he's drinking beers before and after the game and he's schooling these people. We got 7 Lukas over here talking about his own home country.
Interesting.
Like, the NBA is no longer the mecca for some of these people that it used to be. Talking to Bo Beach, the UNF alum Bo Beach, who plays in Serbia, he's like, the talent over here is stupid. And obviously he's in Jokic's home country of Serbia. He's like, that man's God over here. Like, he's actually God.
Sure.
And there are other Jokic's.
Wow. Like,
that's just where we are now. Mm-hmm. So, from a geographical standpoint, Noah Lyles isn't wrong. It's like, you're not a world champion if you play entirely in the United States and Toronto.
Yeah.
Like, you know how many countries there are?
Right.
That have basketball leagues more and more every day. Bo said in our interview one time, he said more teams are being created every day.
Right.
From the demand, from the global popularity of basketball, not the NBA, of basketball.
Right.
And sure, the NBA has a hand in that because it gives players like Luka and Jokic and Giannis a global stage.
Right.
But when you have other players being like, we have, Luka drinks beer and shows up out of shape and he's schooling these guys.
Yeah, like the old school guys.
Like it.
Coming in like Bird did back in the day.
Bird was always in some kind of shape. I don't know if he was ever in shape. But it's just, it's baffling to me. It honestly is that there was no NBA player that was like, he's kind of right, we should change it to NBA. They were all butthurt. Yeah. And it's like, grow up. Yeah. He's telling the truth.
And he is. It's a fact. It's it's very technically correct, and I guess to some degree to maybe play devil's advocate, which does speak to the sensitivity of the players. I think the question, I don't remember the question verbatim, but the question was, it wasn't directed towards any other like sport in particular, but it was a question to I kind of get him to highlight the significance of his accomplishment in track and field, and so Noah Lyles, he just kind of let it rip, and the first.
Yeah, it did kind of seem like it came out of pocket a little bit.
The first guys in the target of his gunfire in the line of fire was the NBA, and so I think probably that was what they were reacting to.
They're probably like, "Why are you coming after us?" More than like, "Hey, like
you could have picked on the MLB version, NFL, whatever, And so I think there was some of that there, but
you're probably true.
It is obvious that for a while now we've seen that with the drama amongst the players,
sensitivity, man,
and just the interactions with people online, like it's a whole another level of just like.
And then what's funny to me is, and this leads me to my next point, kind of perfectly, is I don't know what, like Noah Lyles can say that he competes for his country against other countries.
Yeah.
He competes. Like, you have to work years and years and years and years and years to get to a level where Noah Lyles is a sprinter.
That's where that's coming from.
And all of a sudden, here comes Gilbert Arenas, who has been talking a lot lately, like a weird amount. And he goes, this man, with the exception of the 4x100 relay, this man competes by himself. He competes for himself, not for. He doesn't care about that name on his shirt. Like he competes for himself, and I'm sitting here like, he doesn't care about the name on his shirt, and you, a former NBA player, which is all about player mobility. I don't want to be loyal to any franchise. He's talking about somebody's running not for the country on their shirt, but for themselves. Are you out of your mind? Like,
that's a stretch. That's a big stretch.
And I'm almost pulling on the reins of myself right here. But this is coming from a former player, good, mind you, from probably the most egotistical league in professional sports. Like, the egos on NBA players are astronomical compared to because like other sports humble you real quick in very different ways.
Yes.
Because Ted Williams, arguably the greatest hitter in the history of Major League Baseball, he said he's one of like 2-3 guys with a 400 career batting average. Keep in mind that means 4 out of 10. 4 out of 10 times, and you're considered one of the greatest hitter of all time. He said, we pick a profession where we fail 7 out of 10 times and we're considered great.
Wow.
And football, you literally get hit in the mouth.
That's some good perspective right there.
And football, you literally get hit in the mouth. And basketball, they're literally trying not to touch each other. Like it is the most egotistical league because no one hits them in the mouth. I'm just gonna say it. Don't come at me. I'm just gonna say it.
And then it doesn't help with what the league has done to make the sport less of a contact sport too.
Oh yeah, Adam Silver looks at that and he goes, "Oh yeah, 90s basketball was great, but we don't want it to be that physical ever again." 90s basketball was arguably the height of basketball.
Oh yeah, that's the golden era.
Like
for sure.
Like you look at both the pictures on this wall. What era was that?
90s.
Yeah, early 2000s.
Right at the 2000.
Like, it's just. So I don't think Noah Lyles was wrong. I think if he's coming out of the pocket calling his shot for the NBA, like maybe that's why they were like, hey.
Yeah.
But as far as his statement of like, it's a North American league. Yeah. And there's one Canadian. It's not even like hockey where there's like 6. It's all U.S. and Toronto, which is like right there. Toronto's like a sneeze outside the U.S. Like, so he's not wrong, and I feel like he of all people is able to say that because he wears USA on his chest for a living.
Yeah, he's trained for this moment, and you can't take that away from him.
Yeah. And so that kind of takes me to my segue right away. Gilbert Arenas has said some stuff I don't know if you've been keeping up with him.
No chill Gil.
But it seems like the last 2 weeks, especially, it's like we're gonna pay you $1 million to say everything in the next 2 weeks. Everything you've ever thought in the next 2 weeks. Like what? Like he's out here talking about Michael Jordan. He's out here talking about.
Yeah, I missed that. I heard.
He said something about stats don't matter, or like he said something about either stats don't matter or championships don't matter for the Hall of Fame. And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm gonna see if I can pull up what he said here. He was like, he said some things. But he was like, oh yeah, and I think the person that he was kind of aiming for when he said that was Draymond. I think what he meant was like Draymond's not going to get into the Hall of Fame just because he was the number 3 on a 4-time championship team. Like he averages 8 points a game. Like I think that's what he meant. But then I've also heard Jeff Teague be like, titles mean nothing to me. James Harden's better than Dwayne Wade, even though it's like, then what are you doing? That's the ultimate goal. Like the ultimate goal is to win a championship.
These guys.
Like and so, but it seems like, and then Gilbert. Did you hear the thing about Bill Russell? He was like, if you have Bill Russell in your top 10 all time, you don't know basketball. So but you know what we do know? Winning. And nobody's won more than Bill Russell.
Yeah.
Like, and he's like, you only have 8 teams. Of course, he's going to win 11 times. So, like, he faced the competition that he had to face.
He pioneered,
excellence. He's the greatest winner in the game. And he's one of the best humans the game's had. One of the best ambassadors. And it's just like...
Why are we taking that away from him just because...
All Gilbert. Gilbert said all this. Like,
I know.
It's like, And there's something to be said for like, oh yeah, he played in the league with 8 teams with some plumbers and this kind of. But like, you're gonna, and he said this after he died.
Right.
He said this after Bill. Like, why are you coming after Bill? He's not here to defend himself.
Just leave alone.
Yeah,
I get the whole what angle you're coming from and comparatively speaking, but it's just you got to respect the game. And yeah, it's just why. It always gets fuzzy when you start making these cross-generation comparisons. I mean, we do. Of course, we do it.
You can't really do it, and Draymond himself has even said that. He's like, you can't compare eras.
Why are we looking at the 40s, 50s,
60s? Yeah, 50s, 60s,
50s, 60s.
Yeah,
and comparing that to
LeBron.
This makes no sense.
Yeah, but if you've ever seen pictures of Moses Malone, I think Moses Malone could break LeBron over his knee. Have you ever seen those pictures?
We're talking stature. If we standing guys up side by side.
And I'm staring at a picture of Karl Malone right now. I wouldn't want to mess with him.
Oh yeah, that's a whole different story.
But speaking of LeBron and Karl, I saw this thing the other day, and I don't know if I sent this to you, but it cracked me up, and I really had to think about this. This says it's a picture of Karl Malone. And it says, LeBron James' career without Wade, Ray Allen, Kyrie Irving, and Anthony Davis.
The Karl Malone and LeBron...
Technically not wrong.
It's technically not.
Karl Malone is 3rd in scoring now.
I'm seeing this a lot. And it's just interesting.
A physical beast, scores a lot of points, no titles. And this lists off the players that helped him win titles.
The LeBron haters are just finding, and look, you know me, I'm not a LeBron fanboy by any means. I'll give the man his respect, but I'm not, But
it goes the other way too, right? It goes the other way where I showed you that stat where it was LeBron has 2 titles without Anthony Davis, 2 titles without Wade and Bosh, 2 titles without Kyrie. It's you're making it sound like he has 8. That's so misleading because every single person that was missing, he was with the others.
Right.
And so it goes the same way. The same people that, and it's always going to happen. The people that put Jordan first are going to make the arguments. The people that put LeBron first are going to make the arguments, and sometimes it feels like the arguments for LeBron are wilder than the ones against him.
No, you're right.
It's I'll see this other one here I saw the other day, and it showed this. It said it has Michael and Scotty, which I don't understand that relationship at all, but that's a whole other podcast. And it said playoff totals in the 6 finals runs, and it has points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. The only one that Michael has more is points. Scotty has more in every other category. And I'm looking at this and I was like, okay, so this is obviously trying to devalue Michael again.
Yeah.
Right? Because they had said Michael has no titles without Scotty. It's like, that's called building a franchise, something that LeBron wouldn't know anything about because he jumps to another franchise or brings in 2 players and wins a title. LeBron doesn't know about players now don't know about building it and sticking it out. And so you look at this and Michael's got, his only, it's got, let's start with blocks. Scotty's got 111, Michael's got 91. Scotty's got 244 steals, Michael's got 218. Scotty's got 642 assists, and Michael's got 622. Scotty's got 908 rebounds, Michael's got 718. Outside of rebounds, what do those numbers tell you? They're close. They're close. It's not like, oh, look at this. But then let's look at points. Scotty, 2,200 even. Michael, 3,776. This is called they were doing their jobs. LeBron James is much more comparable to a hyperdrive Scottie Pippen than he is to Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's job, hand me the ball, get out of the way. Same as Kobe, same as KD, same as some of the guys now. But Michael did a lot more in the other categories than some do today.
Okay.
James Harden plays no defense. James Harden doesn't pass the ball that much unless he's getting a stat for himself. Right. James Harden doesn't rebound. But Scotty, his job was to do everything. His job was to score when he had to. His job was to rebound and block and get the ball to Michael.
Right.
And you're gonna penalize Michael for doing the exact thing that team was set up to do.
Yeah.
Like, how many times in The Last Dance did we go into a timeout and it'd say, all right, Scotty, rebound the ball and get it to Michael? That was the point. Mm-hmm. So we're going to ding Michael for having slightly less point total or slightly less statistical totals outside of points than Scottie Pippen, whose job was to do all of that.
And we're forgetting the whole point of the game, like the whole structure of the game. The game is a team sport. That's the reason why you can have 2 3-peats.
That's like saying Reggie Miller is a better all-time player than Shaquille O'Neal because Reggie Miller has more threes.
Mm-hmm. So,
Shaq has 1. Who cares? That's not what he was there to do.
Right.
That's not what he was there to do.
Job, right.
That's like saying John Stockton sucks because he can't dunk. He's one of the best passers the league has ever seen. You do your job.
Your job, yeah.
And
that's why when we started doing this whole comparison thing, it becomes muddy when you look at players who have very different natural skill sets. Like, I'll always kind of lean LeBron toward Magic in comparison.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because that's just, if we're looking at it, if we're trying to be as objective as possible, he is built, and from a skill perspective, he is the evolution of a Magic Johnson. You had Michael, and you had what I believe was, potentially the evolution of Michael in a Kobe, but he ended up being like a 1B.
Yeah.
And so
I heard somebody say the other day, and the man's right behind you. 1 is here, 1B is right there. Mm-hmm. I heard somebody say the other day, it's like, how can you put Kobe ahead of Michael all time when Kobe admitted that he strived to be Michael and Michael was perfection? You can't do better than perfection. You can copy it.
Right.
But you can't do better than it.
Right.
It's
right.
And you're gonna be like, oh, LeBron played longer, Kobe played. So, people's careers take different paths. I'm not gonna put a guy in who played 5 years in the league because he averaged 30 points for 5 years. That's ridiculous. But I always hear, oh, LeBron played for 20 years, which is amazing. I'm not taking that away from anybody. The way that he's been able to stay healthy and do all this, it's amazing. He's gonna hit 40,000. I don't think anyone's ever gonna get it.
Yeah.
And that's great. I'm not taking anything away from him. But then to be like, I did the math that one time about what if Michael played 20 years.
Exactly.
People hated it.
Longevity.
But I'm like, look.
It's you can't. I mean, because like, look, Karl Malone, you can play the whole longevity thing into the argument, but that's, it's about like kind of have that quantity over quality kind of perspective on it. Like Emmitt Smith, didn't he end up getting leading in the rushing yards all time?
I think he still is. If
he still is.
I think he is.
But who's saying he's the best running back?
A lot of people.
A lot of people are saying that, but
I mean, I would put. This is just me. I would put Barry number one.
That's what.
And he played less.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm saying because Calvin Johnson is arguably the best wide receiver ever, and he only played 9 years because they wouldn't trade him, and it was a whole thing, But it was what it was. And so longevity is cool.
Yeah.
Like longevity helped Tom Brady become the unquestionable GOAT of football, which is a hard conversation to have because there's so many different positions that do different things.
Yeah.
But I mean, longevity is something. But not everybody's that lucky. Not everybody has that drive.
Right.
The reasons Michael left were very valid.
Yes.
He left because his father died and he kind of lost his way and he wanted to play baseball to honor his father, which I'm tired of the slander of him being a bad baseball player. Go watch The Last Dance. He was good.
Yeah.
He was good.
Yeah.
And he probably would have made the majors if the strike hadn't happened.
I think so.
Terry Francona himself says he would have, who was the manager of the Barons at the time.
Wow.
And that's a manager who's won World Series.
Sure.
And I'm tired of that slander. Like, because he was like a career 250 hitter. You know how hard that is? You know how hard that is? Go try to hit a baseball right now. See if you hit 1 out of 4. like play basketball for 10 years and then go try to hit a baseball. Like, you think you're hitting 250? It's like one of these things. But then he comes back because he's like, well, first of all, he had nowhere to go play baseball, and he's a competitive monster. He has to compete. He comes back, and then he left again because they were tearing down the team, and he's like, I'm not going. He took a stand. He said, I'm not going if you're letting Phil go. All these things were extremely valid.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you're going to ding him for that, and you can't determine when your love of something is going to die out.
Exactly.
And he came back 3 years later. You don't know. Yeah. I mean, look at Brett Favre and all the players who have tried to retire before.
Yep.
And that's got to be one of the hardest things to do in life if you're an athlete is just look, because it's not just like, oh, he's played 15 years in the NBA. He's played this since he was 5 years old. It's all he's ever known. And he's making the decision that he's done forever.
Yeah.
Like, I can't fathom making that decision.
Yeah.
And so that brings, it's interesting that you brought up LeBron and the Magic thing, because I want to play a little bit of a game now. Okay. You talked a little bit about the NBA 75, and I mentioned this to you a little bit ahead of time that we're going to play a game, and it's called Great or Great at Something. And I'm going to give you the name of a player that is on the NBA 75. And we're going to debate, are they an all-time great? Or are they really great at something? At one thing? Are they one-dimensional, basically? So I'm gonna lob, and this is not disrespecting anyone here. It's just a look at them. So I'm gonna lob you a softball right away, because we both know the answer to this.
Okay.
Dennis Rodman.
Great at something.
You are correct. He's one of the best rebounders the game has ever seen. He's a great shot blocker.
Yes.
But he averaged 7.3 points through his career. And he averaged 1.8 assists. He wasn't 13.1 rebounds, mind you, which I'm not. I don't quote me on this, but that may be the highest rebound average ever.
That's nuts.
That's all he was ever asked to do.
He averaged 20 rebounds, one playoff series or something like that.
Yeah. And what was that thing? What was that stat line one time in the playoffs? He had 0.0 assists, 0, whatever else. and like 24 rebounds. Like he did nothing but rebound. Like nothing against Dennis Rodman. He has a place in NBA history forever.
Did his job.
But he's great at something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're talking about NBA 75, the greatest 75 ever, you really have to look at like, are they great? Are they great at something?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, okay, here's one. Then this one's tough for me, but this is why we're having this conversation. Ray Allen.
All right.
Yep, that's what I was going for.
Here's the thing about Ray, though. Ray was a player. He went through different waves. When he came in the league, he attacked.
He
attacked. He wasn't the level of player that he eventually became. There was a period where he was. What are my two choices?
Great or great at something.
So there was a period of him just being great. Then at a point in his career, he became just extra great at something, which was shooting.
Yeah, because shooting doesn't age.
Exactly.
I've said that for years. Shooting doesn't age.
Right.
Everything else ages.
Right.
So if you can't shoot, that's why they say if you can't shoot, you're not going to last long in the NBA. Because everything else falls away.
Exactly.
And you and I are on the exact same page. I was thinking about this like to a casual person. Like when you came in here talking about baseball, casual baseball person.
Yeah.
To a casual NBA person that just knows, oh, Ray Allen, he's great at something. But you're right. He was a beast in Milwaukee and even in Seattle.
Athleticism,
and
two-way player.
And I think he was a great leader. I think he was he in a way that he was like, I'm going to be here and do my work.
Yes.
I'm not going to make noise. Because he was always surrounded by people who made noise.
Yes.
He was surrounded by KG and Paul Pierce, who were extremely loud. Paul Pierce is way more loud now that he's retired. But this one's close for me. But I'm going to go with great.
Yeah.
Because of what you said. Because of when he first started, he was different.
Yeah, he's different.
And he was South Carolina Mr. Basketball, which is no slouch. Like he's a 2-time NBA champion, 10-time All-Star. He has all these All-NBA teams. And he's just all rookie second team. He was good from the second he showed up to the second he left.
Yep.
And he just was. It'll get harder. It'll get harder. This one's not so hard. Carmelo Anthony. Great at something. He played zero defense. He basically, he averaged around 5-6 rebounds a game. That's fine. He averaged like 3 assists. Like he didn't, let's see what the actual number is. He averaged in his career 2.7. 2.7. He played zero defense. He averaged like half a steal in his career. Like I think 1 steal per game in his career. Like Carmelo Anthony is one of the greatest offensive players the game's ever seen. But the reason that we don't talk about him with Michael, and Kobe, and LeBron is that Michael's got defensive player of the years. Kobe has titles. Kobe's gotten in people's faces and driven them to win. Michael's done the same thing. LeBron's got all the hardware. Carmelo's got none of it. And I was thinking about this the other day. It kind of pains me that he was better in New York, but I think his best shot at a title was when he was traded to OKC, and the fact that didn't happen kind of pains me because it was Russ and Paul George and him,
right? And
so I was just like, okay, this next one's gonna make people mad. I brought this one up to you the other day. You did not agree with me at the time, but you've said you'd come around.
Okay.
Kevin Durant.
Oh, man. Here we go.
And first, let me say what I've said before.
I came around.
Let me say what I said before, just so people know. I said, Kevin Durant's awesome. No, I'm not, but I told you that I think basically what I said was that 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, Carmelo Anthony will be looked at more favorably than Kevin Durant. Because with the exception of Kevin Durant's titles, they're the same player. And the only reason he has those titles is because he joined a team that won before him and won after him. Without Steph and Clay, he has no titles. He's Carmelo Anthony.
It's true. But from a stat perspective, he's going to exceed Melo.
Sure.
That'll play into his favor.
Sure.
Versus, legendary status as a scorer.
But
he has become a two-way player.
Okay. I knew you were going to bring that up because that was the first point you made to me when I told you. How many NBA all-defensive teams was Melo on? How many NBA all-defensive teams was Kevin Durant on?
NBA all-defensive?
Huh?
He had to have been at least one.
None. Not one.
That didn't mean he didn't play defense, though. All-defensive team, as a superstar player,
I will say that Kevin Durant averages exactly one more steal a game than Carmelo Anthony.
What about blocks?
I'll tell you.
Well,
that could just be length too. He's one of the longest people I've ever seen. But
that's his defensive. That's his defensive calling card. You got blocks.
He only averages 4 assists a game in his career.
Mm-hmm.
7 rebounds, but he's taller than Melo. Yeah. Steals 1.1, so he averages exactly 1/10 more than blocks 1.1.
I never knew why he couldn't get more rebounds, though.
Because in today's NBA,
that's the one thing that bothered me about.
In today's NBA, it's literally just they leave one guy down there and everybody else is gone. Yeah. It's just there's not a press on getting rebounds unless you're James Harden trying to get a triple double. Yeah. But my point is, I'm not diminishing Kevin Durant. We've seen how good he is. But what I'm saying is I compare him to Carmelo Anthony because, and I say in time, we're obviously watching Kevin Durant now, so you say something like Kevin Durant is Carmelo Anthony of this generation, you're like,
yeah.
But in time, when you're able to step back and look at the canvas, Carmelo Anthony will be more highly regarded overall than Kevin Durant because they both scored at an elite level. They both were star players. All these things. But people like Carmelo.
Oh, yeah, he definitely.
And Carmelo rarely, he had his headlines. He had that he wanted out of Denver and he wanted to go to New York. But he wanted out of Denver because he specifically wanted to go to New York because that's where he was from.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant just wants out because he's bored.
Yeah.
Carmelo
was beloved.
And so from that standpoint, 20 years down, that's why I'm saying 20 years down the road, it's good.
You got a point there. When you bring that into, especially if KD doesn't get, even if he gets one championship.
There was literally a meme this week. It said Kevin Durant's career without Steph Curry, and it was a picture of Carmelo. It was a picture, so I'm not the only one that said this.
I know that lit you.
And you as my witness, I said this before I saw this. I sent this to you 2 days ago. I said this 3 weeks ago to you. Because I'm just sitting around thinking about this stuff. But, obviously there are some differences. Obviously, but, do we remember how dominant Carmelo was in his prime? How unstoppable the man was.
Crazy. He'll drop a quiet 30 like it was nothing. Could score it on the drop of a dime on anyone. Mid-range, had the best mid-range in the game at the time, in my opinion. Crazy. And that's what they were saying. That's what they're saying about KD.
So, back to the game, since we're talking about it. Kevin Durant, great or great at something? We've talked. The numbers are there. Only one.
It's hard for me to say he's not. It's just the level in which he is executed. I can't say he's just great at something. It's too hard for me. That man contradicted a lot of what I've just said, but just to say he's great at just something,
But without Stephen Clay, he has no championships. We've seen what pure scorers and not much else amount to. Nothing.
We don't know that for a fact. Most likely, no championship.
He was not winning with Russ.
Definitely wasn't.
He did not win in Brooklyn with Kyrie and
no
James.
If he has no championship.
I think this year in Phoenix is going to be a disaster.
You think it's going to be a disaster?
Yes. Okay. What was the problem in Brooklyn? Everybody needed the ball. Bradley Beal needs the ball. Kevin Durant needs the ball.
It's a very ball-dominant team.
Booker needs the ball.
I just think...
Who knows what's going on with DeAndre Ayton?
You have a less stagnant of an offense with these guys, though. You have more mobility. I think a bit more athleticism. If they can put the right pieces around them, get some defense.
I think it was a huge mistake to trade Chris Paul.
Yeah.
He's the only guy that can slow him down.
Exactly, yeah. But they had to in order to get... I guess they had to in order to get the room for Beal.
So I would agree with you, and you're going great.
I got to.
I don't, you know how I feel about that. He has done a little bit more than Carmelo, but the staggering reality that neither one of because the biggest argument is that KD plays more defense. He's got no defensive team, and I'm not even just saying first, no third teams, no second teams, nothing. They're both at 0. I think KD's scoring average is 3 points higher. Everything else is about the same. He has I think 1.5 more rebounds a game.
Mm-hmm.
Blocks pretty much the same. Steals pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
Assists, they're both very low.
Mm-hmm.
I think what did I say? 2.7 for Carmelo, 3.7.
Yeah.
Durant's at 4.3. So it's like the numbers are there. It's like okay, he does this one thing at an elite level, and the rest is just.
Yeah.
Okay. So we could talk about that. Could be a whole hour on just that. Okay. This one is a little tougher. No, it's not. It's not tougher than Kevin Durant. But this one, there's a debate here. But I think it's Charles Barkley, the round mound of rebound.
CB? I don't know, man. He's a pretty well-rounded player, no pun intended.
I wasn't even thinking that.
Especially when he lost that weight. Defensive stopper. He had the strength. He could get a bucket.
Yeah, he was scary.
He was scary. He had the IQ. He knew how to distribute the basketball. He could dang near run the ball down and play point the whole game if you needed him to. He was that talented.
I don't know if he was that fast, but he was that talented. I don't know if he could have done that just because he didn't have speed. But he played for the 4 for his entire career. He was only 6'6".
He was only 6'6".
He was only 6'6". That's the same height as Michael, who played the 2.
That's nuts.
Let's keep that into perspective.
That is nuts. I gotta call that great.
I agree with you.
I gotta call that great.
This one, on the face of it, you're gonna be like, "What?" But I added this one for a reason. Larry Bird.
That's a good one.
He didn't play much defense. Like there are 2 players. There are 3 players that I know in my knowledge of the NBA that get talked about a lot as 0 defense. James Harden, Carmelo Anthony, Larry Bird. That's why I bring him up. One of the best trash talkers, maybe the best white trash talker in the history of sports. What say you?
If we're going with the if we're going technically, based off of our rubric.
So the grade at something would be shooting, right?
Yes,
one of the best shooters.
very much
That
so.
would be the greatest.
But you're saying I don't like the only thing I don't like about the whole great at something that implies one thing.
Yeah, because it's like
Larry Bird was so his IQ was so crazy. Like he was one of those players. He was almost like a parallel of Magic in his ability to distribute the basketball and knowing where players were on the floor.
These are in the middle. Some of the ones that we're going to get to next, you'll see it's more kind of here, there, like one or the other. So Larry Bird, yes, his IQ was stupid. This was somebody who would tell opponents before games, I'm gonna drop 50 on you, and he would do it in the third quarter.
He was one of those.
He was White Michael in that way.
I can't call him. And this is similar to the Kevin Durant thing. A lopsided in their game in a way, but like I gotta give him grade.
But was he? Because what did we just talk about the parallel between Carmelo and KD, the one that surprised you?
Without chips.
No defensive teams, and that counts first, second, third.
Yeah.
Larry Bird, 3 All-NBA defensive second team.
Shoot.
3.
3?
3.
Because of what? Because of steals?
It could be anything. Like if you're on the team, there's a reason.
There's a reason.
Let's see. Let's go see.
I know he'd get out in that passing lane a lot and get steals.
I mean, he was long too. He'd be out there, like so. If you're arguing about he plays no defense, I mean, he's got the hardware that kind of says he does, you know. And it was 3 straight years, 82 to 84.
Can't argue with that.
Let's see, steals per game. He averaged about 2.5.
Ain't bad.
That's pretty dang good. That's like 220 steals a season.
Barely any athleticism and barely any jumping ability.
I mean, yeah, he averaged 0.8 blocks a game.
Something else, man.
But that's almost 1 block a game. Like that's tough. You know?
Yeah.
Okay. This one might hurt because it hurts me a little bit. Allen Iverson.
Come on, Roman. You know what I'm gonna say.
I do. That's why I said it might hurt.
It don't hurt me. Cause I'm not gonna say.
Are you going to admit this about anyone? That's the point of this game.
Because I just disagree. Allen Iverson was a multi-dimensional player. Okay, yes, a lot of the defense he played was only defense when he had to play defense. But he had the ability to get steals and be a stopper. He did have the ability. He could score off of any situation. I mean, you look at the height, his ability to he had the ability to be a playmaker. Did he lean that way in his game? Not a lot. So that kind of affected in his ability to, elevate his team.
I will say this. He was in college. He was 2-time Big East Defensive Player of the Year.
Yes.
And he never had an all-defensive team, but he did when he was the NBA steals leader 3 times.
Yes, he had the ability.
But
he just was.
I think the reason why Allen Iverson comes up in a lot of conversations, not just this, but a lot of conversations as far as reevaluating stuff, is when you think about Allen Iverson. Again, 10 years looking back, 20 years looking back. When you think about Allen Iverson, at least for me, I think of a couple of things. All of which boil down to he was probably the most culturally influential athlete of all time outside of Michael Jordan.
That's easy.
Because when you look at college Allen Iverson, when you look at rookie Allen Iverson, before that uniform change came in, the black one, you know what I'm talking about? He was whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then The tattoos come, the headband comes, the cornrows come, the long shorts come, the fashion comes, and you got little white boys in elementary school wanting cornrows. Like, that's dang near cultural appropriation, but we didn't know that term yet. And I think that overshadows his actual career a lot.
It does.
What would his career have been? Where would he be sitting in the all-time annals of history if he had stayed that clean cut, no tattoos, no style Allen Iverson? Because when I think Allen Iverson, I think about practice. We talk about practice. I think about cornrows. I think about long shorts. I think about the all white with the white hat and the white shorts, white shirt. I think about style. I think about swagger. Like, it takes me a minute to think about what he actually did on the floor. So it's not that he's only good at one thing. It's that the rest of his career gets overshadowed by one thing.
That's a fact.
So that's where this game is tough. It's not that he was only good at one thing. It's that you think about him and one thing just glaringly blinds out everything else. And his career fell off hard at the end. Like, once he left Philadelphia, it was like he aged quick.
He aged quick. But why is that, though?
Because he played hard.
Because he played through countless injuries.
We basically see the same thing with Russ.
Right.
Russ is, okay, I'm just thinking about this now. Russ is today's Allen Iverson. A lot of flash that overshadows everything else. Allen Iverson's way better than Russ could ever be. But all around. Russ is, I've never been a fan of Russ, you know that. Ever. And now the rest of the NBA is seeing it. But that's where it's tough, and I agree with you. I think the casual fan again would say, "Oh, he's great at something," and it's being the cultural icon. Right. But I mean, he played. He's a steals leader. Steals are hard to get, man. Yeah. Especially they called reaching in a lot more back then.
Oh yeah.
So it's hard to get. So I would say he's great, but it's a lot closer than I want it to be. It's a lot closer to that line than I want it to be. And I knew it would rile you up, and that's what...
It got me. That one got me.
All right. Here's one. Especially considering who this is, and he got passed recently by somebody that there's no debate where they land on this argument. But this person, Reggie Miller.
This was a bit tricky.
Where does Reggie Miller go?
He was exceedingly great at one thing in particular.
He wasn't a great defender.
He was not a good defender.
He wasn't a great passer. He didn't rebound a ton.
Right.
But when I think of Reggie Miller, a lot of people think about the 8 points in 5 seconds, and he got both those steals. But is that just one moment? You know, it's like, so...
I got to go with... On this one, it was the one thing. Great at one thing. Probably. But legendary at that.
So you're going one thing. I'm going one thing as well. I do love. I think being in the league with Michael helped him a lot because he did play tough defense on Michael,
yes.
But and he's forever attached to Michael with this. This one might be tough. This one, because there are two things that really point you one way, but you might not go that way. Steve Nash. Those two things being his 2 MVP awards. Now, I'll let you think about that, and I'll say my piece here. Is that Steve Nash was a great passer. He averaged 8.5 assists a game. That's just dumb. Like what? What is that?
He's top 5.
He would average 15, 20 assists a game if he was allowed to do it with his feet. But because I always heard he was a better soccer player, better hockey player than a basketball player. Yeah. He only averaged 14.3 a game. He did win an MVP, but when you look at the years of those MVPs, at least one of those, many people argue that the man behind you should have won one, if not both of them. And so you could argue that both of those MVPs were controversial. He didn't make a defensive team. He never was any kind of steals leader or anything like that. He was a great floor general and a great passer. And I think to me, he's great at one thing. But what's going to pull people back, I mean, it's hard to argue with two MVPs. But again, those MVPs to some are quite controversial. And let's not forget that in his career, Steve Nash played with Dirk Nowitzki, Amari Stoudemire, and later in his career, he was on the Lakers with Dwight and Kobe. So they also helped inflate those assist numbers.
Exactly. Those lobs.
So where do you sit on Steve Nash?
That's a hard one.
I know, that's the point of the game.
He.
And the next one's Michael Jordan. No, I'm just kidding. Steve Nash. What say you?
Assist king for sure. IQ was crazy.
A lot of this, I think, for us, it's hard, is because it hits us right in the nostalgia bone.
Yeah.
Like this is us falling in love with basketball.
Exactly, seeing these guys just.
The amount of white boys in my elementary school that had Allen Iverson jerseys.
Already know it. Yeah, I mean, definitely not a defensive guy whatsoever. But I mean, I don't know. He made a big impact on the game. It's just hard for me to say.
Never won a title.
He never won a title.
He did join the 50-40-90 club, and there are only 9 people in NBA history to do that.
Even though he was great at more than one thing, it was really essentially you would kind of like categorize it in one thing and being like the true point guard.
Floor general, yeah.
Floor general.
He could score if he could score, but he didn't. He only averaged 14 a game.
Right.
You could say the same thing about Chris Paul, but Chris Paul scored a little more, but he didn't have to.
Right.
I would favor great at one thing.
Right.
Just no one here is, except maybe Carmelo, is so bad at everything else.
Right.
But what we're talking about is there one, like with Allen Iverson, is there one thing that vastly overshadows everything else?
Right.
And so that's where the confusion is. We're not talking about they suck at defense. They suck at rebounding. And literally James Harden and Carmelo played zero defense. None. And Kevin Durant plays some. Much of the NBA now doesn't play any, but Kevin Durant plays some, but he's still not good at it. Like, I wouldn't say he's a good defender. So that's kind of, I think, the hard part for you and your logic is we're not talking about, they're great at this and they suck at everything else. It's like they have one thing that overshadows everything.
Exactly.
And, like Dennis Rodman was a great player, but anyone will tell you he was there for one reason. He was there for one reason. Like, no one's going to ask Kevin Durant to pass the ball. Everybody talks about what a ball hog Kobe was. Nobody was asking him to pass. He didn't need to. Like, that's the whole thing. And no one's going to say, Kobe is great at something. Kobe's, for some, the second best player of all time. But it's just like, there were a lot of other things that was up the same level for Kobe. And so let's keep moving here. The next one, this one's going to hurt me a little bit because this is one of my all-time favorite players. The glove, Gary Payton.
Oh, man.
One of my all-time favorite point guards.
One thing.
That was quick. That was quick.
Love the glove. But, I mean, he was just known for him being a defensive
I mean, he averaged 6.5 assists a game, 16 points.
Right.
I have to agree, but that hurts. that really hurts. That hits me right in my soul. And it's going to get worse because here's my other favorite point guard. Yeah, I don't even have to say it. Yeah.
Stockton was like the evolution of Nash was like Stockton, but Stockton was more fundamental. Like style wise, they were different.
Stockton's job was simple.
Yeah.
He played with Karl Malone his whole career.
Yeah.
His job. I mean, look at. I think is Stockton still the all-time passing leader?
He is.
See, he's the all-time assist leader. Karl Malone is third all-time in scoring. Why do you think that is?
Exactly.
Like, this man defines floor general in the NBA.
Defines floor general.
Like, he could score. He averaged 13.1.
Yeah.
But who's asking him to?
Exactly.
Yeah, he averaged 10.5 assists a game.
Exactly.
He 2.2 steals. He played some defense.
Right.
Are we factoring that in at all?
Got to. I mean, he's a great player. I mean,
he hung on to the short shorts longer than anybody.
Yeah, I appreciated that though, man. He made him look cool. You know, Stockton had his own little swag about him.
Whoa. Okay, I did not know this, but this might change your mind because I feel like you're leaning towards great at one thing.
Yeah.
He's first all time in steals.
Oh shoot!
I did not realize that until I scrolled down.
I thought I had heard that. You might have to give him a great then. First all time in steals.
Okay, yes, but this is weird. I scrolled down on his page, and this is just a weird stat. Oh, it also says he's one of 2 players in history to lead the league in steals and assists in the same season. Chris Paul being the other. But this is crazy. Okay, he's first. This is just weird. He's first all time in career assists. We know that. First all time in steals. He's first all time for games with at least 1 assist. He's first all time with games with at least 2 assists, 3 assists, 4 assists, all the way to 25. He's the first all time in games with a number of assists from 1 to 25. All of them.
Crazy.
This man had 293 games with at least 15 assists. 15 assists 293 times.
Yeah, just call it great.
I did not realize that he was first all time in steals, but that's got to do it. If you're first all time in 2 categories, that's like an automatic thing.
Yeah, you got to give it to him. That's crazy.
Moving on. Ooh. He's only on this list because I heard somebody bring it up the other day, and I don't understand why. David Robinson. First NBA player I ever remember loving.
He's that dude, man. Admiral, man. I don't know how to not call him great.
He's got a scoring title. He's got 4 times.
He's
got Defensive Player of the Year.
He's well rounded. You know what I mean? He could score the basketball. He was a dominant player. He was feared defensively. IQ was crazy. I don't know how to not call him a great.
All right, I have a couple more, but I wanna wrap it up here because I want to get to our bonus content that people will see coming in a bit.
Right.
So I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thanks for joining us on the podcast, Bruce. This was a long one. I don't know how long it was, but it was long. I think I tired out some of these cameras. But thanks for joining us on this. We covered a lot of ground, as you and I usually do when we talk sports. We talk about basketball for you. You always come over for the finals, and we talk basketball through the entire game, every time. Every time. So thanks for joining us, being the first guest in our space, first one to sit on the couch.
It was an honor, man.
You know, and the audience is getting the first look at the other side of the desk. You're sitting on the couch, the futon here. So thanks for joining us. If you're a listener to the show, please like and comment on the content. Let us know what you like. If you're a first-time listener, please like and subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, your social media. Tell us what you like. Help us grow this into something special. We put in so much work at this show to do more and more every year. Bruce will tell you he was on the 3rd episode all time, and it was just me and him and one other guy just sitting in the living room. with one mic. Actually, with no mic. We didn't have a mic then.
Yeah, came a long way.
So we're working so hard here. We got a long way to go, but please like and subscribe. Empire Sports Talk or Empire Sports Talk Pod on all the socials. Please check us out and give us your opinions on the very controversial things that were said in this podcast today. And please stay tuned for bonus content coming your way featuring Bruce, which we're going to get to as soon as we wrap up this pod. That's all I have for Empire Sports Talk. I want to thank Bruce one more time. Thanks for hanging out with us, Bruce.
It was an honor, brother. Looking forward to coming back.
Absolutely, for the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and 25th time. For Empire Sports Talk, my mom's favorite podcast, this is your host, Roman Gennaro, signing off. See you next time.